In search of things that trigger our fight-or-flight response, we often land in a place that goes beyond the paranormal and monstrous. Dominating the fear we now possess is true crime, the missing, the massacres, and whether or not we can truly trust those close to us. Number 10. Among the 1910 West Pike Run, Pennsylvania Slovakian immigrants were young John Vaniac, his parents Joseph and Joanna, and his 4 siblings, Adolf, Franco, Joseph, and Apollona. There, John would attend the St. Procopius College, whose mission sought to educate Czech and Slovakian men. While there, he became the editor for the college's publication called Students' Listy, and published an article called Roosevelt and the 8 Men in Theory. By 1917, he would see himself as the rector at the Sacred Heart Catholic Church in Verdun, Illinois. This was his first position in the church, where he remained for the next 6 years. But his position as Father John Vaniac would be abruptly ripped away come March of 1923. Now 28 years old, the priest found himself preparing for the upcoming church bazaar. It was the 5th when he began the 85-mile journey to St. Louis, where he would buy items for the event. He also planned to invite a fellow priest and friend, Father V.F. Lynette. He was the pastor of the Holy Trinity Slovak Catholic Church, located on Rutger Street. John would often stay at Lynette's home during these trips, and they often helped each other with their church services. When John arrived at his friend's house, he found that there was no one there. He left a message and headed to Rice Sticks Dry Goods before making his way to the Butler Brothers, where he would purchase a few select things. The priest planned to make his way home after stopping in Mount Olive, Illinois. It was here that another friend and priest, Father Charles Naparek, lived. He planned to invite him to the same event. All seemed in order, plans were made, and invites were pending for the big bazaar, which was on its way. Then, on the 6th of March, a haunting discovery would be made. Parked at Elm and Main Street near the Mississippi River was John's car, but the rector was nowhere to be seen. When police got word of an abandoned vehicle, they simply towed it away to the garage, believing it was intentionally abandoned. In the days to follow, though, a spine-chilling missing person case would be woven. Citizens of Verdun, including family and friends, became heavily concerned when they hadn't seen John in the days to follow. He lived with his mother at the time, and she expected him back no later than Monday evening. But that time had come and gone, and John still hadn't arrived. Concerned, various residents headed to the St. Louis police, inquiring about their missing priest. There, they would give detailed descriptions of the man they were looking for. He never carried any cash. He was 5'6", devoted, cheerful, and a sports fan. Now, with the possible description of a missing person, police could begin their extensive search. A.C. Harness, a garage owner in Venice, Illinois, recalled helping a man matching the description. He claimed to have fixed John's car that Monday, the same day that it was found abandoned. The mystery would soon make national headlines and front pages of newspapers. Police, family, friends, and fellow church employees found themselves scouring hospitals, making door-to-door inquiries, and searching the surroundings. But it was all futile. Father John was never found. The only piece of evidence was the car, a Buick coupe. On the front seat were various pieces of paper, which authorities suggested may have become dislodged from his pockets during a potential struggle. Most disturbingly, in the back seat, scratched into the paint, was the phrase, "We won." Stuck to the undercarriage were stalks of wheat, indicative of a sudden detour through a field. Adding to the eeriness, the St. Christopher's medal that John attached to the door had been pried off. It didn't take long before several theories began to pop up. One claimed that he decided to leave the church and staged his own vanishing, a suggestion disputed by Lynette, who ensured that John was a dedicated man. Father Naparek also claimed to have received an ominous and anonymous phone message in which the caller alleged that the missing man had been assaulted by highwaymen in St. Louis. No one knows who these menacing highwaymen were, or if they were even real. In fact, the story produced the controversy of whether or not it was a prank phone call or something entirely made up by the priest. Adding to the various layers of this enduring mystery was another allegation that came from Joseph Vaniac, one of John's brothers. He'd reported that his brother was being held by an organization, although he never revealed exactly what organization this was. He alleged that the police chief asked him to keep this piece of information quiet, but Joseph opted not to. But the claim remained yet another point of controversy, in which it couldn't be confirmed if this really happened at all. The name John continued to dominate the newspapers after his disappearance. Theories continued to abound, but none of them led to the solution of the question: what happened to Father John Vaniac? Number 9. Imagine someone you know and love disappeared 45 years ago, and you never found out what happened to them or where they ended up. Most would be going insane after that much time. Such is true in the case of Denise Dorfman, a concert pianist who disappeared in 1980, and that still haunts the San Francisco community. Denise was the administrative assistant in the Department of University Relations at the San Francisco University in California. She also attended the university as a night student. As far as most could tell, things were running smoothly, and the 28-year-old was in good spirits in the days leading up to the event. It was the 9th of February, 1980, when things began to take a daunting turn. Denise had headed to the neighborhood grocery store, where she purchased a few assorted items. It was about 5:30 p.m. when shoppers and tellers had seen her, describing her as being in good health and seemed happy as always. After that, though, Denise would disappear. She was there one moment and gone the next. 2 days went by, and no one seemed to notice yet that the young woman hadn't been seen. When Monday rolled around, and Denise's employer noticed she hadn't shown up for work, they made contact with her parents. Her mother rushed through to the apartment located at Lake Street and 22nd Avenue in Richmond. There, she discovered that the door was unlocked, the lights were on, and the bed was in an unmade state. But Denise was nowhere to be seen. It was as though she'd gotten out of bed and simply vanished. It quickly became clear that she was missing, although no forced entry or signs of a struggle were obvious. Some believe that the missing woman stepped out to buy a pack of cigarettes, only taking a small change purse with her. That very day, Denise's parents found themselves making that daunting trip to the police department. And that was that. Authorities would handle the case from there. All they could do was wait. Before the investigations could begin, though, there would be another development. It was Tuesday, the 12th of February, when the Secretary of Employee Relations received a bizarre phone call. It was someone claiming to be Denise, who said that they were taking a leave of absence. The call was no doubt mysterious and out of the ordinary. It was particularly unusual for Denise to make contact with the employee relations instead of contacting the office where she was working. This phone call marked the last time anyone would hear from her, if it was the missing woman on the other end of that eerie phone call. Newspaper articles regarding the disappearance wouldn't be posted until 12 days later. Just as quickly as her case arose, the name Denise Dorfman faded from view, overshadowed by more cases that echoed a scary, enduring phenomenon, disappearing without a trace. Number 8. We all have that one person in our lives, the one that's always happy and unleashes a contagious sense of joy in others. Nemrod Tessima was that person within his friend circle and immediate family. He was the ray of sunshine that lit up the room when he walked in. In fact, his sister, Rowena, referred to him as an Energizer Bunny. Known as Rudy to his friends, the 46-year-old, originally from Rochester, New York, found himself living in Mercer, Iron County, Wisconsin in 2023. Rudy played the role of the oldest of 3 siblings and the father of 2 children. He led a faith-based lifestyle and was described as loving, spiritual, and caring. In September of 2023, though, he would have a minor run-in with the law, after which he became increasingly fascinated and more connected to his spirituality. Although he was a devoted Christian, Rudy turned his attention to the Native American culture and became fascinated by their views on becoming one with the land. He also became intrigued by the concept of understanding different parts of humanity and nature. So that September, he embarked on a spiritual journey. Several friends, including an activist for Native American causes, William Goodberg, accompanied him. They'd met back in Rudy's hometown, and it's believed that they traveled back to Wisconsin together. Reportedly, William's girlfriend was having a baby, and he needed a ride. Rudy, being Rudy, helped him. By the time they were heading back to Mercer, it was October. Along the way, the pair stopped in Minnesota, allegedly to meet some of William's friends. This would mark the start of an enduring mystery. Sometime between the 18th and 19th of October, both Rudy and William decided to head into the woods on a 2-day-long spiritual journey. On the 21st, Rudy would reemerge about 10 miles from Twin Cities. It was around that time when he would call his sister. They FaceTimed for about 30 minutes, during which he relayed all his experiences and spoke of the practices of the Lakota Sioux. It appeared that somewhere along the way, William had split, and Rowena would end up phoning him to pick her brother up. William, who seemingly emerged from the woods before Rudy, arrived in the Twin Cities and then drove to the Mercer mobile home park. Rowena didn't know it at the time, but that phone call would be the last she would hear from her beloved brother. On the 22nd of October, Rudy allegedly claimed that he wanted to go on another journey into the dense tree grove. This time, he opted for a longer journey. It would be that very day that a woman who was also living in the park spotted a man, matching Rudy's description, walking around her trailer and then into the woods nearby. Some believe that he was in search of William's trailer but couldn't find it. No one knows how long he planned to remain on this journey, but 2 days later, concerns began to surmount. Noella, William's girlfriend, reported that he was missing, and he made contact with Rudy's family. As they swarmed to the area, the Native American activist would show them all the places that the missing man could have ended up. He also made use of his contacts within the local Native American community, who also came in to aid in the search. Law enforcement would soon begin their investigation into this unnerving event, hoping to piece together this obscure mystery. He interviewed Noella and William separately and found that their timelines matched the details given by Rowena. But it seemed unlikely that Rudy, who was very connected to his relatives, would leave them behind. Nonetheless, his brother, Hayab, suggested the possibility that he was still alive and opted to start anew. He also believes that Rudy may still be on his spiritual journey, although 2 years later, this seems like an unlikely scenario. Number 7. The brutal demise of Diana Vicari is no doubt fear-instilling. It was unexpected, unmotivated, and remains unsolved. Described as a quick-witted and happy individual, Diana faced life with enthusiasm. She was a good friend and exhibited a love for animals that instilled the hope of becoming a marine biologist. Her traumatic story begins on the 22nd of October in 1992, when the 19-year-old left her community college drama class in Tucson, Arizona. She headed to a local bar and was reportedly seen in the parking lot of the Tucson Convention Center, where a concert was being held. In the days to follow, family and friends would become increasingly worried. They hadn't seen Diana for days. She hadn't shown up for work either and was soon reported missing. An investigation quickly ensued, and it didn't take long for a graphic discovery to be made. The upper limbs belonging to the missing woman were found wrapped in a garbage bag and menacingly discarded in a nearby dumpster. They'd been removed using both a serrated blade and a heavy, sharp object. The medical examiner suggested that they'd been removed post-mortem. Diana's car was also discovered abandoned on the roadside. Interestingly, it was on the same block connected to Robert and Scylla, her drama teacher, whom she was alleged to be in a relationship with. On the 22nd of October, there was also a house party taking place in the neighborhood, and nearby a registered offender, Lemuel Pryan. Police quickly turned their attention to Pryan, naming him as the prime suspect and quickly charging him with homicide. But that conviction was thrown out since no evidence connected him to the crime. Most disturbingly, the rest of Diana's remains were never found. The homicide of Diana Vicari is recognized as Tucson's largest cold case, and one that remains a point of discussion to this day. Number 6. It's any parent's worst nightmare to discover that their child is missing. It's a sense of unimaginable panic that washes over them. Whether they're a child or an adult, the feeling remains the same. Sonny Hendricks and Lee Allen would become the unexpected victims of that haunting phone call, the one that asks, "Have you seen your son?" Nathan Allen had a big personality, one that truly left an impression. He was friendly, and his hugs were described as legendary. He was one who conveyed warmth and comfort. Nathan was not someone you would forget. This is why his absence within the Beebe, Arkansas community is still spoken of today. His story begins on the quiet eve of June 29, 2019. The 34-year-old father of two was working as a mechanic in Searcy at the time. It was 9:45 p.m. when he chatted with his girlfriend. It was a Saturday night, the perfect evening for a date. So the two arranged to meet at the Waffle House an hour later. Nathan's girlfriend waited and waited and waited, but he was a no-show. He didn't strike her as the type to bail on plans, so the disappointment was instead replaced by concern. Then days went by, and still there was no word from him. When she tried to call Nathan or even text his phone, it went unanswered. That concern quickly grew into fear, and she decided to make contact with her boyfriend's family. They too were immediately worried. It wasn't until 1 week later that the nightmare truly began. It was the discovery of Nathan's truck, which was parked at the Economy Inn, located on West DeWitt Henry Drive in Beebe. Instead of offering answers, though, the discovery deepened an already eerie mystery. Disturbingly, the truck had been left unlocked, and investigators would soon happen upon keys, glasses, cigarettes, and an inhaler, all belonging to Nathan. These items should have been with him. They were items that he would carry everywhere. And while these personal items littered the surroundings, there was no trace of the missing man. But at least the police and family had a place to start searching. Lee, unnerved by the sight of the truck, was confused. He believed that his son had no business there. It was an aspect that would continue to haunt the family for years to come. The last confirmed sighting of the man came at around 11:30 p.m. on the 29th of June. He was spotted walking away from a motel. Multiple tips came in after that, each of which went dauntingly cold. Captain Baron Dixon with the Beebe Police Department believed that someone Nathan knew may have been connected to his disappearance, yet they have no evidence to substantiate this claim. Information regarding this individual can be directed to the Beebe Police Department at 501-882-3365. Number 5. Born into a household ruled by a disciplinarian's hand, Cindy James found her upbringing devoid of comfort and warmth. Her father was a colonel in the Royal Canadian Air Force. The family found themselves jumping from place to place, and Cindy was forced to find solace in anything she could. As soon as she was of age, she left the household and moved to Vancouver, where she would study nursing. Although she left as quickly as possible, she still wrote back home and called her parents regularly. At some point, a few of her letters became reminiscent of a budding romance, an unnamed figure who'd offered her a sense of stability. But that relationship ended quite abruptly after a terminal cancer diagnosis found its way into the mix. Although her boyfriend passed away, Cindy handled it fairly well and threw herself back into her studies. Then she ran into South African psychiatrist Roy Makepeace, who was 18 years her senior. Despite the age gap, Roy and Cindy got married, but this too would suddenly fall apart. The pair hardly acknowledged one another, and physical violence was prominent. Divorce was inevitable. This rocky patch, though, would only be the start of a strange mystery. Not long after the divorce, Cindy's life took a terrifying turn. For 4 months, she began to receive disturbing, unrelenting phone calls at all hours of the night and day. They were incoherent voices on the other end, and sometimes the tone would change. It would be a whisper or just nothing at all. But one thing was certain, it was haunting. From there, things only escalated to the point where Cindy began to believe that someone was lurking around her house. Only furthering the fear, she received a call in which the whisper allegedly stated, "I'll get you one night." It didn't take long for that very threat to become apparent. Rocks crashed through the window of her home. Her porch lights were smashed, and her home was vandalized. Then the assailant entered the home, slashing her pillows with a sharpened blade. It was a campaign of pure fear. Despite police investigations, no evidence of an intruder, aside from the torn pillows and broken windows, could be found. Roy became a suspect by the RCMP, but this didn't result in a charge. Instead, an alliance was formed between him and the lead investigators. The task force watched as things began to escalate with Cindy, who was now receiving obscure images and letters from the alleged intruder. Then the events swelled to crescendos when the woman was discovered unconscious in the backyard, a nylon stocking wrapped around her neck. When she came to, she recounted a tormenting incident, one that the police would find no evidence of. She would then be found unconscious again, this time with a sharpened blade in her hand, a chilling note, and an allegation of being injected with something. Although there was a needle mark present, Cindy had no narcotics in her system. It was the 25th of May, 1989, when Cindy enigmatically disappeared. There was no trace of her for days, leading friends and family to grow increasingly concerned. Despite investigations and inquiries, she remained missing. That was until the 8th of June when she was discovered in Richmond, a nylon stocking wrapped around her neck, poisoned and no longer breathing. She'd been there for at least a week. Initially, Cindy's COD was attributed to a high level of narcotics present in her bloodstream, but that ruling was later changed to inconclusive. At first, given the lead up, it appeared as a homicide, but not everyone was for this theory. The RCMP believed that the campaign of stalking and harassment had all been made up, and the question emerged: was her demise an accident? Was it the work of a masked maniac? Or was Cindy the architect behind it all? Number 4. It was the 31st of October, 1953, in Chattanooga, Tennessee, where 60-year-old Myrtle Morgan was living. Darkness was descending over the land, and Halloween was drawing to a close. But jack-o'-lanterns, ghostly costumes, and haunting decorations weren't the only scary things that dominated that evening. It was the perfect night for homicide. Myrtle was just settling down in her Rossville Avenue home when she opted to have a quick chat with a friend. She called her up just after 7 p.m., but their brief conversation was ominously interrupted. Myrtle stopped the call, telling her friend that she had heard something, theorizing that it was her son-in-law's cat. Price Stevens was living there with Myrtle's daughter, Norma, who was out roller skating with Price's young sister. They were due home later that evening. She set the phone down and walked off. Silence buzzed for several minutes to the other end of the line, only to be shattered by an unnerving scream. The friend, alarmed by the event, handed the phone to her daughter, instructing her to keep listening while she headed to the neighbors to use their phone. She alerted the authorities, reciting the eerie phone call. She claimed to have heard the sound of a creaking door just moments before the scream, a piece of information that sent a convergence of police vehicles rushing to the residence. Simultaneously, Price and Norma had just returned home and were met with flashing lights. Officers told him of the frantic phone call from a friend, sending him into a panic too. He and a neighbor flung toward the door, attempting to breach it, but it had been secured with a sliding latch. They located an unlocked window and were able to make their way inside. Accompanied by police, they headed down the valley. An overturned chair in the living room was the first sign that something sinister had taken place. Then they found the telephone, emitting a never-ending ring. On the other end was the worried friend, demanding to know if she was safe, but they didn't have the answer to that question yet. The group proceeded to the second door, the kitchen. It was here that the unfortunate discovery was made. Myrtle's body was lying face up, partially concealed beneath a quilt, and her clothing had been removed. Her nose was shattered, and there were fractures to her facial bones and a broken jaw. At the base of her skull was yet another fracture, the one that triggered a hemorrhage. Then a most bizarre injury was discovered. It was a hole that traveled through Myrtle's gum, the size of a .32 caliber slug, though x-rays revealed no such item, nor was there presence of an exit wound. It was never determined what caused such an injury, and it was thought that Myrtle had been attacked with a flat, blunt object, which was still unaccounted for. It's thought that the mysterious, unwelcomed visitor had entered through the unlocked front door following the departure of Norma and Price. The assailant then secured the lock, the very noise that Myrtle heard that prompted her to investigate. After the attack, the unidentified man exited through a broken window. Any possible justice that could have been found for Myrtle was also quickly snuffed out by mismanagement. Before senior investigators could arrive at the scene, 100 curious onlookers had trampled through the scene, hoping to witness the carnage. Any and all evidence of the assailant was obliterated in the process. Number 3. When he was only 8 years old, Odin Gordon was diagnosed with a minor learning disability. By the time he was 12, he'd begin to withdraw from his friends, and by 18 he was too afraid to communicate with anyone. Odin would also suffer from anemia and scoliosis. In 1989, his mother, Rizzi, decided that he should live at a facility. She soon enrolled the now 21-year-old in the Lyris Foundation Plowshare Farm in Greenfield, New Hampshire. It was a place that was intentionally designed to help young adults who suffer from both emotional and physical disabilities. It's believed that the young man was faring well there, but 6 weeks later, things would take a dark turn. It was the 12th of May when Odin found himself among the other patients doing garden work at the farm. At some point after becoming bothered by flies, he separated from the group. Caregivers weren't too bothered by his sudden departure, seemingly believing he was going to sit in the car. But that's not where Odin went. Instead, he enigmatically disappeared, and no one would hear from him again. With no coat, money, or means of identification, the young man wandered off. When police were notified of the sudden disappearance and realized the urgency of the situation, they brought in the bloodhounds. Unlike most of these cases, this time the canines were able to pick up on the missing person's scent, and the hunt was on. Officers trotted behind the hounds, who dashed toward Highway 31, 3 miles away. Then the dogs stopped. The scent was gone, and the mystery remained. Police soon arrived with the possible idea that a motorist had seen Odin wandering along and stopped to pick him up. But where he went from there was another mystery. Then, much to their surprise, some days later, a man entered the police station and told investigators that he'd seen the person they were searching for. In fact, he'd picked Odin up. According to the Good Samaritan, the young man had been at routes 2 and 12 in Fitchburg, Massachusetts, the very evening of his vanishing. The man dropped Odin off at a donut shop in the area, but his whereabouts after that again fell into obscurity. Bizarrely, there would be several more sightings, but the police couldn't find him. If he's still alive, Odin would be over 50 years old, and he's currently listed as endangered and missing. Number 2. It was 2016 when Shauna Lee Golba found herself living in Shakopee, a city in Massachusetts located near the Connecticut River. She was staying at the Pines Motel, located on Massachusetts Route 33. By 2016, Shauna had quite a criminal record for mostly minor offenses, such as violating probation or skipping court. That year, in April, she'd be arrested for an altercation that took place in Framingham at a domestic violence shelter. That evening, she arrived at the facility, which had already closed. Shauna ended up standing outside and causing a disturbance. She allegedly began fighting with another resident there, forcing the staff to pull them apart. While neither woman was severely wounded, they were both hospitalized. Shauna suffered trauma to a recently reconstructed eye socket, while the other woman was said to have been pregnant. In court, when a prosecutor asked for her bail to be revoked, her lawyer defended her, citing that her criminal record largely existed when she was with her ex-husband, with whom she had 3 children. If she were to be imprisoned, the children would be at risk and in danger of being returned to the father's custody. It was this event that is mentioned in conjunction with others in the lead-up to an unfolding mystery. It was the 16th of December, that same year when Shauna got into a taxi, bound for Springfield, a neighboring city. It's believed that she was dropped off around Union Street and School Street. This location was in close proximity to both a school and a complex apartment. The only problem was no one knew why she was in the area. Her children didn't attend school there, nor did she maintain a residence nearby. Her reason for visiting wasn't known, and it'd be the last place that she was seen. 10 days later, the Shakopee police, who were investigating this mysterious sudden vanishing, suggested that she may have been seen in State Street, although it's uncertain where they received such information. The area was just a short drive from the last reported sighting of Shauna, but after investigating, the police came up empty-handed. Concerned for her well-being, her family searched for her along with the police and even implored for the help of the public, but there was nothing. Or so we thought. It turns out that the police have documents of over 40 pages, all relating to investigative work into the disappearance of the 37-year-old. 40 pages is a lot of information, only a handful of which has been shared publicly. By January of the following year, there was still no sign of her anywhere, prompting police to appeal to the public again. It's now been 8 years since, and the case still remains unsolved, and various questions have presented themselves over the years. What did those 40 pages reveal? And where is Shauna Lee Golba? Number 1. Lynette Campbell grew up in a close-knit community out in Tarpon Springs, Florida. Everyone knew everyone. At a young age, she met John Campbell III, who was 9 years older than her. The happy couple relocated to Newport Richey, Pasco County, where Lynette was keen for a life as a homemaker. She also found joy in caring not only for her daughter, but also for other residents' children. She was well liked in the community and had no enemies. The couple were married for 8 years, together for 15, when things began to get a bit rocky. They would end up separating in 1993, and Lynette was set on the route to rebuilding her life. In 1996, she'd be working as a clerk at the Salvation Army. Co-workers noticed how thoughtful, quiet, and genuinely caring she was. She just wanted to help people, and at the time, Lynette was living with her mother and young daughter on Highland Avenue. The divorce had created a great upheaval for her, and she was trying to recreate the stability she once had. Like any single mother, the 35-year-old was cautious about diving back into dating. Nonetheless, she caught the eye of a man named Mark, with whom she would form a budding relationship. Excited about this newfound romance, the two would have a Friday night out. But little did anyone know that these would be Lynette's final hours. It was 11 p.m., May 31st, 1996, when her mother watched her daughter leave the apartment, heading out on her date with this new man. And what happened after that was a puzzle, where varying accounts and eyewitnesses provided the pieces. It would be hours before the next confirmed sighting would come. It was around 1 a.m. when Lynette was spotted at the Bridge Lounge near the Anclote Bridge. It was this very spot where locals would find themselves unwinding, having a drink and socializing. But what makes this sighting bizarre and eerie is the fact that Lynette wasn't accompanied by Mark, nor was she alone. Bar patrons had corroborated this by describing an unidentified man who accompanied the now missing woman. He was clean-shaven, had a dark complexion, and was around 5'11". His description was pretty generic, and he could be anyone. Another acquaintance of Lynette's was there that night and spotted the unknown man too. He hadn't seen him around before, suggesting that he was new in town, someone just passing through. The next bit of information would come more than an hour later. A cyclist had passed by a 1978 Oldsmobile on the north side of Anclote Bridge. It was Lynette's, and this is where things get all the more sinister. The cyclist saw a couple inside, and they appeared to be roughhousing. Whether this was a playful exchange or something more chilling was a question yet to be answered. That witness was the one who called the police with claims of a possible domestic dispute that sent patrol cars rushing to the area. And there, they would find more than they bargained for. What started as a welfare check erupted into a missing person case. Inside the Oldsmobile was Lynette's black purse, car registration papers, and other papers, but the woman was nowhere to be seen. The story only gets more bizarre from here. The very next day, the abandoned Oldsmobile was spotted twice in different locations each time. It was as though it was being intentionally moved around. First, it was spotted on the side of Anclote Road, and 3 hours later, it was moved a mile west and left near the entrance of the Tarpon Springs Correctional Center. Adding yet another obscure layer to an already intriguing mystery was that same morning, a man named Mark called the house in which Lynette was living. Her mother answered the phone, and the caller asked to speak to her daughter. Whether or not this truly was Mark, that remains unknown, only prompting even more questions. It was the 8th of June when police came across the Oldsmobile again. And this time its windows were smashed, the stereo was ripped out, and various items belonging to the missing woman were scattered around. It appeared as a robbery, one that manifested pure violence and only raised more concerns about Lynette's well-being. Investigations continued, and the search for the missing woman ensued. It had been half a month when one of the final pieces of the puzzle was discovered. It was the missing woman's deceased body left in the sawgrass. Deputies in an airboat made the grim discovery, and finally that question was answered, but at the cost of a life. It was the call they'd all been dreading. Despite having all these components to form a clear picture of Lynette's movements, there were still vital parts missing, the ones needed to end an enduring mystery. The pieces needed were to form the picture of the perpetrator who attacked, assaulted, and claimed the life of a woman who was just trying to get her life back on track. The case remains unsolved today and continues to haunt the Florida community. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But my name is Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.